Hello. Welcome. Thank you for being patient. I know that you guys wanted to start early because you're so eager to listen to everybody talk. Welcome, take a seat. Um, there. Um, so, the Houston Lasers have been going on for almost half a year now. This is our fourth one. And we're very excited to host Vicki Meek and Cristina Boccalandro this evening. Leonardo Art and Science Evening Rendezvous. That's what LASER stands for. And it's a series of lectures and presentations on art, science, and technology. It was founded in 2008 by Piero Scarcuffi from Stanford. And on behalf of the Leonardo IAS, which is a journal of art and science, that the lasers are now presented across the world. So we are Houston. So, yay! Yeah. Each evening includes presentations of art, science, projects, news from the audience, and time for casual socializing and networking, so please feel free to ask questions as the presentations are going on. And the idea is to spark collaborations and conversations between art and science. This is a map of where we have laser around the world. As you can see, there's a lot of lasers going on. And Serpik and I wanted to bring laser to Houston because Houston is independently known for its sciences, NASA, medical center, oil and gas, and also known for all of its arts. The Menil Foundation, I remember people from Slovenia, let's go to the Rothko Chapel. I've studied it since I was a kid. So we think it's fantastic to be able to start this kind of cross-pollination of both of these groups. So here are more of the institutions that host laser around the world. You have Berkeley, University of UCLA, Puget Sound in Seattle, yeah. Stanford, and Transart. Oh yeah. So we're important too. So yeah, Leonardo, like I was saying, it's the International Society for Art, Science, and Technology. It's a fantastic journal, and it's an MIT publication. So since 1968, it's been going on. And it serves the global network of distinguished artists, scientists, and researchers, and focusing on interdisciplinary work and creative output and innovation. So if you're interested on this kind of cross-section of art, science, and technology, I recommend you to go to your libraries and check out the Leonardo publications. And I think there's a lot of these talks online as well, so you could see what other talks are happening around the world. So without further ado, the Transart Foundation was started by Serpik Angelini, and why don't you tell us more?
Well, Transart Foundation was started in 1997 with Abdel Hernandez, a Cuban artist, anthropologist, and theorist. And we started with a very comprehensive event at Rice University, sponsored by the anthropologists at Rice. And since, I have been working with other artists whose work involves research in cultural, social, and anthropological issues. And I'm very interested in this interdisciplinary relationship between the arts and other fields. So my interest is basically focused in the creative process rather than the results. Though since I've had this wonderful building, now I have the opportunity to actually organize exhibitions and conferences as this or lectures, and it's very exciting to be expanding in those terms. So anyway, I welcome all of you. Thank you so much for coming. And I'm very proud of having Vicki Meek's exhibition here and having Dr. Cristina Boccalandro exchange today. So I will let this.
So the Laser Houston team, we're the chairs, Serpic Angelini and me. Aysim Kader Chassin. I never introduced myself. I'm Aysim Kader. Should be the first. I need to put this slide there. So I'd be like, and her name is Technical Director Carlos Pelayo Martinez Rivera. He's actually streaming this online, so it will be on YouTube if you want to see it later. And also the technical support of Gabi Osuna, who is she's collecting emails and signatures, so if you want to know about the next events, please make sure you talk to her, yeah? She said, I'm not going to be able to get everyone, so you know, she's waiting. And Nicholas Stewart Spencer, who always helps me print all the programs. And today, Dr. Cristina Boccalandro, she's an endocrinologist from the Texas Endocrinology Group. She will be talking about the healing power of photography. And next, we will have, Vicki Meek will talk first, but sorry, I messed up the order. She will talk about her current work right now in exhibit Vulnerable. Vicki Meek is an artist and also the Chief Operation Officer of USEKRA Center for Creative Investigation. So thank you very much.
All right, so everybody has pretty much seen the exhibition, I'm assuming, yes, but that's okay, you're gonna see it again. This time virtually. So one of the things that I wanted to say before I start is I wanted to thank my bestie, Barsamian, who has helped me install, and he does every single time I need it. He shows up Johnny on the spot. So thank you, Barsamian, for being my friend and helping me out. And Carlos for also making sure that we had access. I want to do that. And thanks, Sorpic, for thinking of having me here, because I live in Dallas, but my art life has been in Houston. And it is just wonderful to have all of my energy, coming together this weekend around this show and the show that I have at the Houston Museum of African American Culture. This body of work is not really symbolic of what I typically do, because I don't typically do work that's very personal. But when I found myself having a sort of medical emergency that happened in 2016, I hadn't been sick. I was a person who, prided myself on I didn't take medications. I didn't have any medications, and I was very healthy and all that. And I had been gaining weight for a number of years, and I just chalked it up to old age. I was 2016. I retired from running a cultural center, and it's just like that's what happens. You get old, you get fat. Just saying, that's what I thought. And I also thought that you get old, you get tired. And there were all these things that I was thinking were all related to age, and it turns out that, in fact, they weren't. It was a medical condition. I had a thyroid that had stopped working 10 years because of growths on it. But because I didn't have the best of medical insurance, I had never had a physical that would have even told me that that was going on. So it was this sort of like, once I got my Medicare, I was able to have a full, real physical, and that's when that doctor said, no, that stuff that's happening to you is not normal. So, they did a scan, and sure enough, I had these growths that had rendered my thyroid inoperable. Inoperable. So I I had been having issues that were really baffling to me. Like I was really very conscious of my dental health. I was very proud of my teeth. My teeth were the best in my family. I didn't need braces like my sisters, and I didn't have cavities or anything like that. My mother would always. My mother had a horrible thing with her mouth because she was a depression baby. So she was real about getting good dental health, and she would always go, and this daughter, oh, her teeth are perfect. The others were good, but they have braces and stuff. And so when my tooth broke unannounced one night in my mouth, I was freaked out. I didn't know what was going on. And turns out that when your thyroid does not work, you're not processing calcium correctly, you're not processing vitamin D correctly, and things begin to happen. And this was probably a result of that 10 years of not having that being processed correctly. So I was horrified, it was just like, oh my God. Because I still didn't know why. I didn't know what was going on. I also chalked that up to old age. Well, you get old, your teeth fall out. I don't know. I don't know. It just seemed reasonable. So once this doctor made me get a scan, and we saw what was really going on, I made the decision based on the fact that some of the growths were problematic that I did not want to chance waiting to see if I was going to have cancer. I just said, what happens if you take the thyroid out? And she said, well, you have to take medication, and it sort of simulates what your thyroid does, and that's kind of it. So I said, well, then I would like to have that removed because I do not want to be stressing out for the next 10 years to see if it develops into cancer. So I had the surgery scheduled, and it came out. Well, because I had no idea what a thyroid was or what it did, I had no idea that it regulated everything. And so I was prescribed with Synthroid, which is what I guess most people take, but my body doesn't deal with synthetics, evidently. And so I was having all kinds of weird reactions. Oh, I'm supposed to be making stuff move, I'm sorry. Let me go back. I said, how can I get to this one right here? I want to start with these two. I don't want to start with, I put it in the wrong order. So let's go to that. Okay, good. So I started having all kinds of bizarre symptoms of things happening to my body, pains that were just out of nowhere, heat, like it was like I was in perennial menopause, and I had already been through menopause, so I was really not about trying to do that again. But all of a sudden, I was back in full menopause. In fact, it was worse than my menopause that I went through, because I was like literally waking up in pools of water, basically. It was that bad. The sweating was that bad. And then I had heat. It's like your body's heat regulator is off. So you're just like hot, like in weird places. And all of this was happening over a course of, I'd say, a few months, because as they figure out this medication, they have to regulate the amount, and then I had to actually try 3 different types of medication before they settled on a natural one, Armour, that would not make my body go into shock. Oh, and the other thing that they didn't tell me was that when you're taking this synthetic deal, it counteracts with fluoride. Okay, so I've already told you I'm a tooth freak, so you can imagine that I brush a lot. And I'm brushing with my fluoride toothpaste one day, and all of a sudden my mouth, it was literally like people were hammering in my mouth. The pain was so bad. And I was due to have oral surgery on a tooth, so it was like, oh no, that's not gonna work out well. And so the dentist had to, order some non-fluoride toothpaste and, do some things to make sure that I could survive this deal. And so all of that was traumatic. It's just, all of these things that were happening were just totally traumatic. So then we finally get myself regulated with the medication that I needed. But in the meantime, I had also gained all of this weight. I literally, if you remember inside the the exhibition, there's this sequence. This is actually a sequence that talks about there's a myth of Oshun. Oshun is a Yoruba goddess, and it's a myth about how she was the most beautiful goddess, and the peacock is symbol. You know, you always have peacock feathers associated with Oshun. But it's the myth of how she saved the earth when the other Orishas were going crazy and dismissing Olorun, you know, the creator. And the creator decided, I'm going to send a big drought to the earth in order to teach him a lesson. And the earth was dying, and she decided she was going to save them by going and having a conversation with Olorun. But to do that, she had to go through the sun's heat, and that's what happened at the end, is all of her beautiful feathers were burned. For me, that conversation was about vanity, and the fact that I had been extremely vain my entire life. I'm not ashamed to say it. And all of a sudden, I had to totally reassess who my physical being was, because it wasn't what I had been for so many years. And that scale is me. I had topped 200 pounds, and I actually went up to 207 pounds. And it was one of those situations where it was, you know, wasn't something that I could control, because it was the fact that I, you know, didn't have any thyroid working, that this was happening. So this whole conversation with the Venus of Willendorf, you know, the figure, the fertility figure, but also a symbol of corpulence. That was my journey from me being the vain person that I was, to me understanding that it's really about the inside of what's in me that's really important, and that's what people are connecting to. They're not connecting to, well, they may be connecting to the physical, but you know, most people will get past that pretty quickly. And then you go into the final room, and it's this room where the shower curtains are is about the way in which you have to come to terms with, you got to surrender it. And you can either be depressed and, you know, stress about it, and since I wasn't trying to pay all that money to a therapist, I figured I'll make art. And so that's how the body of work came to be. I decided to work this out through my artwork. And the materials that I used, like the shower curtains, it was all about vulnerability, because I felt this was the most vulnerable I've ever felt in my life, because I felt like I wasn't in control, and I'm a control freak, in case you hadn't figured that out. And it was totally out of control. You know, it was just like, oh my God, you know, I can't make any of this work for me. So it really was coming to terms with sometimes you don't have that control, and you just have to surrender. So the last piece is the hand of, you know, just surrendering. All of this work was done in bed, for the most part, with my iPhone and my iPad, because I had actually made a decision that I wanted to only do work that could be done that way, because I didn't want to have to build things like I normally would do with my installations. So this is my idea of selfies. You know, other people do selfies one way. This is my selfie exhibition, because all of this is me. It's all photographs of me, other than the peacock, obviously, and the vulture. And Venus, that's not me. But everything else is me. And I think the reason why I gravitated to photography was because it's a medium that I had been using in other ways in my work, and because of the new selfie culture that we live in, I thought it made sense for me to take that culture and turn it into a conversation around not being the superstar that everybody wants to be for 2 minutes, because, you know, that's kind of what I see this selfie culture being, but using it as a way of actually self-examination. And it's interesting that we're going to be talking to an endocrinologist. I didn't know what an endocrinologist was. And they said, well, now you have to go see an endocrinologist. I said, had to look that up to see what that person did. So now I have a personal relationship with an endocrinologist. So lovely. So when they told me that I was going to have a talk today, and it was going to be with someone who was an endocrinologist who's now exploring photography, I was like, nah, really? That's just too good. Yeah. Because I too believe that there's a certain type of healing that happens when you are photographing, and especially if you're photographing yourself. Because that exploration is this whole thing was about me healing, not just physically healing from the surgery, but healing myself around who I was now as a person. And all of that is my new direction. I'm actually moving into video. I'm not going to be doing much of this kind of work at all anymore. I'm moving into video because I think that the technology part of our civilization it's gone awry in many ways, but it's also freed us up as artists to look at a whole new way of having a conversation with people that for me is critical, because once you kind of get into the mainstream and you get collected by museums, et cetera, I have lost the audience that I was interested in talking to, because I was interested in talking to just regular people. And most regular people don't go to museums. Sad to say, but it's the truth. So for me, when my son made the suggestion, well, Mom, why don't you start looking at, he calls it movie magic. Why don't you start looking at movie magic? Just start video. How about that? Because then you can go places and be with people with a flash drive and have a dialogue, and you're not locked into having to build something or have a gallery space in order to show it. You know, you really do allow yourself the ability to have immediate contact with people if you can do this thing in video. So that's where I'm headed. And I'm unlike a lot of old people, I'm not afraid of technology. In fact, I really love technology. And I'm really looking forward to exploring this new arena, because it will allow me, I have people in lots of places around the world, it will allow me to have a conversation with those people in a way that I could not as an installation artist. You know, I can't afford to ship my stuff to a whole bunch of places around the world, and they can't afford to bring it. So this will really allow me to have an artistic conversation with my people all around the world. So that part of it is really exciting to me. And we'll see, I mean, you know, from a technological standpoint, we'll see how much I have to keep up with. Yeah, I know, you're laughing at me, whatever. I'm gonna do it, you'll see. But you know, learning the technical parts of this part of the medium is gonna be an interesting journey. But it's one that I'm really looking forward to and embracing. And then the idea of continuing to explore photography, especially since I'm not looking at it from the standpoint of, I guess, like the trained photographer would, you know. I'm not trying to get the right color balance and, you know, all that. I really am just trying to use that medium as a way of having a kind of immediate response to a situation. So that's kind of where I am as an artist. Did I show you all the pieces? Yeah, I think I did. That's just and these are all materials, like the baby blankets and the shower curtains. They're all materials that I consider to be times when we are most vulnerable. So materials are important to me in this kind of work. It won't have to be as important once I start doing video, but for this work, it was very important that the materials respond to the theme. So that's why you see what you see with that. And then the diary, if you read the diary was me just keeping up with all these things that were happening. And then me taking photographs and creating collaged images of the activity in my head that was happening. And I'm not a person who journals. Like, that's the other thing, is that, you know, one friend of mine is an avid journalist. You should just journal and get all your feelings out. I was like, oh God, I gotta write something. No, I don't think I can do that. And the thing is, I am a writer. Actually, I write all the time, but I'm not a journal person. You know, it's like the whole idea of sitting there and just, today, you know, my face was, I just don't even get it. But anyway, I know it's valuable. I'm not belittling journaling. It's just not for me. So this diary was my concession to that. You know, I did a little bit of writing in it, and then the rest is imagery that I thought was supporting what I was talking about. So I mean, are there questions as we're?
No, we're going to do a Q&A after.
Oh, after. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm taking over the. Yeah. She has a format. Okay, so.
Yeah, people can ask questions now, but we'll also have a Q&A together.
Okay, so have I used up my time?
Can you talk about the materials that you use, like on this show?
Okay. Well, all of the images of me are photographs that are then collaged onto the canvas, and in some cases stitched onto the canvas. And then I found these really amusing. Well, they really weren't amusing, but really amusing pictures of like the inside of my mouth. That is actually the inside of my mouth. And then I found these things, these old ads for tooth care. You know, they're talking about how your teeth are. What, there was something about, I'm trying to see what that said. It was really humorous. There was something about your teeth are like your crown or something. I mean, something that's really like telling you how wonderful your teeth are. And I'm just like, yeah, well, they once were. And then all along here, there are other things like regulators, barbed wire. You know, when my head was on fire, that was that image of my head burning. All of a sudden, it was just heat, unexplained heat. I mean, extreme heat. And so all of these images are photographic with other collaged things as a part of it. Because that too, that whole collaging, putting together these pieces of things, that's kind of how I felt my body, that was what was happening to my body. It was like, you know, it was in pieces. It was like literally operating in pieces. Parts of it were doing well, parts of it weren't doing well. And I never knew when that was going to happen. You know, I never knew which part was going to turn on me on which day. So that, and then the middle banner is my scary photo, as Sorpik said. Very scary photo, Vic. It's like, that's kind of how I felt. You know, the whole time I was trying to work all this through, it was so baffling. And that's this vinyl. That's an image put on vinyl. And then the shower curtains. Those are the ones that I love the most because they're the textures in these are so nice. But they are all done from the photograph and then blown up, and I send it to a company that will put things on anything. And I'm sure they probably look at these and go, what kind of shower curtains is this person? Why? You know. But you know. Yeah, right, yes. But it's a wonderful fabric. You know, it's a very nice, good fabric. And the quality of the image is what I was most interested in. You know, it's a very beautiful textured image. And the only other material that I think I used was, just blankets, baby blankets. Elia's reminding me of things I need to say because baby blankets, had everything printed on a baby blanket. So that's what those top images are, and then the other bottom image is printed on a slick paper with the controls. And what I liked was the ability to have the text, so you get not a lot of text, but just enough of like a little thought, and then you read into it what that image is. You know, all of that was done while I was in bed. Because I had a period of time when I was just in bed, and I was like, I can't just lay in bed, I gotta do something. So I had my iPad, and you know, be dark at night, and I said, let's see what happens if I put a light on myself. And so that was how I was getting these sort of illuminated images of myself. And then you just add in the text and, you know, get it printed on the baby blanket. So those are the materials for this particular installation. And I tend to use materials, I have always used materials that are kind of everyday household kinds of things in my installations. And then make them into something else. But
I'm really curious about your diagrams of all this technology. What was drawing you to it? Was it trying to understand how your thyroid used to work?
yeah, well, seriously, I mean, because once they told me it's the regulator, that's how it was explained to me. Oh, the thyroid's the regulator. And I'm like, the regulator? Wow. So I started looking up regulators and seeing, different types of regulators and what they regulate. This one's for gas and heat, and this one's for, there's a car, the regulator. There's a technical drawing of a regulator. I mean, I just got obsessed with this idea of there's this little tiny thing in your body that literally regulates everything. And if it's out of balance, you're out of balance. So that's what was interesting to me about those, the dichotomy of having a mechanical regulator and your body as a receptacle for a regulator. So.
What was the significance of the pink eye?
The red eyes, they actually are sort of red. It's because that was the one, if you remember, that was the one about the blood. And I was deathly afraid of needles, right? There were so many things that this whole thing made me have to come to terms with. One of which was that because now I had to have blood taken on a regular basis so they could check levels and all of that, I was having to go in and have blood taken, and literally I was one of those people who could almost faint from give blood, So the thing on that crown is actually the cotton balls that how they put your arm once you get blood. That's what they're the blood cotton balls. Is what, I'm not even having you look at that. In that crown on my head, it's the blood balls. And then my eyes are red as well because it was a sort of a symbol of the distress that put me in, and I was seeing red. I was upset. I was seeing red. And then, of course, X marks the spot where all that trouble started. So that's what that particular image was. And I actually liked it because there's a Yoruba sculpture that has that kind of crown on it, and that's what it ended up looking like. So it was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. But anyway, that's what that is. Yes?
In the journal part, it was interesting you wrote a comment, aging is about adapting, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
That feels so resolved and so powerful, and yet here you talk about that process. It doesn't sound like you were resolved at all. Mm-hmm. Or did you start to come to terms with
No, I came to be resolved. Okay. Yeah, I had to get there, and it was a process because I was, like I said, I'd never had any medical issues, so I had the idea that I had to take medication, which I was, so proud. I was like, after 65, all my friends were on 15 different medications, and I'd be like, ooh, girl, I ain't on nothing, And so it's like, God will fix you if you start acting too cocky. So, now all of a sudden, but even with that, now I only have to take one pill. I take it every morning. My sister has had lupus since she was 19. And she has had so many complications as a result of that. Open heart surgery, breast cancer surgery, all of her joints. She's had 2 hip replacements. She's on all kinds of medication. And she just keeps on ticking and takes a licking and keeps on ticking. So I said, you know what? If she can take all that and still be finger popping, I'm sure I can take one pill and be fine and not complain about it at all. So that was kind of like I had to start looking at it from the standpoint of reality. I'm very lucky. That could have been cancer. Could have been.
But even with that statement, though, with that turn corner that we get to go through the exhibit with Peacock and the vulture, the rumors that we're having a conversation before we read
The myth of, yeah.
We were thinking like, wow, this is so like what the adaptation process is. We were thinking, we either see ourselves as buzzards when we're young, and then as we get
Oh, I never saw myself as a buzzard.
we were
Yeah.
Close, but I appreciate that we did start off with the narrative because the work was so powerful that we were able to experience it and.
But that's, but isn't that what art is, though? I mean, just because that's what I meant for it to mean, if you see something else in it, that's fine with me, But just know I never thought I was a buzzard. Ever. So, you ready for switch on?
Cristina, and then we can continue the conversation. I'm sure there'll be a lot more.
Well, while we get this going, I will have to say that nobody knows what an endocrinologist is. So usually when somebody asks me, what kind of doctor are you? I go, oh boy, here we go. Sometimes I should say, cardiology or something, but if you say endocrinology, people go, endo what? So endocrinology, we treat hormones. So that's how we usually start. So the endocrine system, but it is complicated. So I have to say that, it was, go ahead. So it's interesting to hear. I think it was very good that Vicki's talk was before mine, because then, of course, now we're gonna kind of flip-flop the idea completely different. So I do love to do photography. I am not a trained photographer. I just happen to be doing photography for a long time. And it has happened that, let's see how, okay. So for me, I mean, my talk is going to have a lot of images, so the idea is for you guys to see some of my work is, and I'll try to explain how that ties into all these health issue. So I've always liked to photograph, I always liked to travel, and I started putting some photograph on my office for a few years back. And then the response that I have been getting from my patients has really been amazing, and I will have to say I have some of my patients in the audience, so so it really is what has driven me really to do more photography. And I think as physicians, we have to have a little bit of art inside of us, because you have to kind of understand your patient and try to, drive into your patient's mind and try to do your best to heal your patient. Unfortunately, I think the way the health system is, where you have to see a patient every 5 minutes, you don't sometimes have the time to do that, but part of your job is to solve a problem. So to solve a problem, you have to understand your patient, and I think, to me, my photography has given me the capacity or the ability to have my patients into a different dimension. I think, they relax when they come in the office, they see a lot of images. There's a lot of talk about traveling and adventure and images, and I think that helps me to connect with my patients. So we're just gonna see a few images, and then I'm gonna explain how I came to all of these. So this is Portland. This is an image not too long ago for the fall. So this is Mexico. I love this. This is an angel. Sorry? Oh, I'm so sorry. Okay, this is Mexico. This is Puebla, and this is an image of an angel done in wood, which I find amazing. Like, you see the mantle that, falls on, all that is carved wood, which is amazing to me. This is Iceland. This is walking on top of a glacier in Iceland. That was a couple of years ago. With the sun in the winter, which doesn't go up too high, so there's not much. This is about the highest sunshine that you'll get in Iceland in the middle of the winter. So this picture is in Nepal, and we were walking through a Hindu temple, because in Nepal you have both Hindus and I'm Buddhist, and so this was a Hindu temple, and this guy is one of the ones that live in the temple, and 5 minutes before he was asking for money to take a picture, and I just saw him peeking out of the window, and I couldn't resist the temptation to take a picture of him. So this image is also recent. This is on my trip to Portland, and I was just walking through this little road, and I got off the car, and I thought the moss was so beautiful. So sometimes it's nice to see images from a different perspective, right? When you see a different perspective, you can see things that are completely different. So this image is Oaxaca, Mexico, and this was actually inside of an art gallery which had some beautiful art, but the thing I liked best was that receptacle of flowers just floating. I thought it was so beautiful to put that in the middle, and you have the morning light that comes in through the window. This is another image of angels in Puebla. You know, Puebla is a city that is very close to Mexico City, and it has about 100 churches. So you have a lot of imagery that is related to that. This is the Cathedral of Puebla, which is very beautiful in the afternoon light. This is one of the most amazing places I have been. This is Bolivia, and this picture is taken at 12,000 feet altitude, which is flat. You have the Bolivian high flatlands, and you can drive on top of that forever, and you are driving at 12,000 feet, so it's the snow because it's actually very cold. And you see there are a lot of volcanoes. Look, what you have on the back is actually a volcano that still a lot higher than 12,000 feet, so it is very high up there. This is Cartagena, Colombia, which I just loved the colors. I loved the yellow, and I loved the blue sky, so I thought that was a beautiful image. So this is this is still hangs in one of the walls in the office. This is one of the most favorite images of all my patients. This is a Galapagos, and they swim, exactly. Those go in the water and they actually swim. So those are iguanas, but they're sea iguanas. So they actually go down, eat on the bottom of the sea, and they come back up. So this is Tanzania, and these guys are dancing. So, I mean, they were awesome how they were jumping, so I thought that was a very colorful picture. So this is also Tanzania. Well, we were doing a little safari, so it's amazing how big these people can be, the giraffes. So this is Atacama Desert in Chile. This is the highest desert in the world, and what you see there is salt, actually, it's not snow. So there's a lot of salt there. And I thought, that looks like Mars. There's like a area of it that they have used it for like astronaut training and things like that, because it is very similar. This is another image in Galapagos Island, and this is a tortoise swimming under the water. This is Tanzania. This is coming down from Kilimanjaro. If we have time, maybe we'll see a little video about Kilimanjaro, but this was February of this year. We went to the top of Kilimanjaro, which is the highest mountain in Africa. And this image was really exciting because you walk for days above the tree line. So once you start coming down and all of a sudden you see something green, it's like, wow, so exciting. So that was the first thing green that we were seeing as we were coming down. And I thought the mist was so beautiful because it gave it like this very different atmosphere to what you were looking at. This picture is Israel, and this is the Dead Sea, and what you see there is actually salt, it's not sand, and what you see on the other side is Jordan. And my friend Don, who's here in the audience on the back, was driving, we were driving, visiting that area, and once I saw the color of the Dead Sea, we had to put the brakes and I had to get off the car. And so I had to run out to take some pictures, and Don, which is part of my exploration team, was patiently waiting while I took a million pictures. And I found this door in the middle of nowhere. That door goes nowhere, so I thought it was like so cool. And if you see, there's actually nothing, I mean, you don't see the whole thing, but there's nothing on the right or on the left of the door. I mean, it's completely open, but I don't know what, there's a door there. But I thought it was just absolutely cool, and the color of the sea was just amazing. And then this is Nepal. Actually, this is an Annapurna base camp, which was another of the trips. We did this in 2016. But this picture, particularly, one morning when I walked into my first patient, 7 o'clock in the morning, you know, you're like starting your first patient, you have to warm up. So I opened the door, I say, good morning, how are you today? And the patient goes, before he says anything, he says, you made my day. And I'm like, how did I make your day? you just made my day. And this picture was actually up. So we have a rotating gallery, so we changed the photos. And so this picture made my patient's day. So I thought it was so cool that, that I was able to do that. And that actually has triggered me, doing more and more photography, basically because of my patients. So this is Texas Hill Country. This is spring, one of the little roads near Fredericksburg. This is Alaska this summer from a boat. This was such a beautiful sunset. This is another picture of Alaska. You see the little boat on the back. We were exploring around, and this is the light going through an iceberg, which I thought it was like a magic huge jewel that was just floating in the ocean. And this is a beautiful animal. So you see so many of them in Alaska that is crazy, but I mean, they're beautiful and they're huge. So this is a happy sea otter swimming in Alaska. Again, all these pictures are this summer. And they're very cute creatures, but they're very aggressive, so you probably don't want to get too close to them. This is Alaska, which you wouldn't believe, but it's very green, and it's like a fairy tale little area, so you think a fairy is going to come anytime soon. This is Africa, and this is the king looking at you. This is a photo of Benny's in the canals. And this is actually also one of my patient's favorite pictures, so I put it. So this patient, he's 85 or 86 years old, and actually he's one of my favorite. The first time I met my patient, he was very cranky, like cranky, so nobody wanted to talk to him, but then, you kind of become friends with your patients after a while, and one day he was waiting for me to walk in the room, and I have an Instagram account, so this photo is on my Instagram. So he had gone through all the pictures, and he said, "That little fat lady, that was my favorite picture," and he was just laughing at it. So this picture was taken actually in La Paz, Bolivia. Instead of a bus, because La Paz is very hilly, they have a cable car system. So you go places on a cable car. And so this lady was on a cable car station, and she was going to the market, and she just dropped, her bag from the market, and she was there were some massage chairs, so she was enjoying the best massage. And so this is Patagonia, which is one of my favorite places, and which is very magical to me. And this picture actually was yesterday. So this is, I was in a wedding in Austin, so this is the wedding party, so this weekend. So that's kind of the type of photography that I have available for my patients, and I think it's power. I mean, I didn't know how powerful it was actually until I started getting all the feedback from my patients, and I think it really has propelled me to do more and more photography. So, but a lot of people ask me, well, how did you get into photography? How are you a doctor that is a photographer? I really have no answer, but I guess everything comes from somewhere. So I put 2 pictures that are important, and this is me when I was a child, but it's not that I was cute, because I know I was cute, but the important part is that these pictures were taken by my grandfather, who was a photographer, and he was a good photographer, and I think maybe from some of that, it comes from somewhere. So, and then, since we have some anthropology involved, I'm going to put a short video. But so I think what gives you the capacity to understand your patient is being flexible, is understanding people from different cultures. And I had the huge opportunity when I graduated to medical school in Venezuela. I attended medical school in Venezuela. So we have a mandate to do a year in social service before you can work as a real doctor. So instead of working in a shanty town, which would have been interesting but pretty dangerous, I decided it was probably best to go to the jungle. And I couldn't think anything smarter than going to here, which is, if you see, this is Venezuela, this is Brazil, this is Amazon jungle. And to get here takes about 3 hours by plane, a bush plane, like over the jungle. So it was a pretty extreme experience, but it really taught me how to live on a different time, a different zone. I work with Yanomami Indians, which are one of the most ancient cultures that still live because they're very isolated. So I just did a little movie. Let's see if it runs properly. So we'll see with some of the pictures. Hope it goes. These are all the doctors that were in the jungle. So as you can see, I'm the one on the right and the left on my right. So that's where we went. How we get out of this one, sorry. We're trying not to start again. But that was really a huge, huge learning experience. to take pictures of these people is almost impossible because they don't let you take pictures of them. So I was very lucky, and that's all film. There's no digital photography back then. I was 24 years old back then, and so you have to save your rolls for whenever you had a good opportunity to get a good picture and make sure they all came back. So you wouldn't go back to civilization for months. You will be out there for 2 or 3 months before you could come back. After 2 or 3 months, you become one of them. I mean, your shoes wouldn't fit. It was a mess, but it really was an amazing experience. So I think that really opened my exploration, my gut for exploration, which is really big, and I love to travel and I love to bring. So I think what I do is I try to bring all those experiences to my patients and to my office, and I think that creates a lot of, it helps me, really, it helps me to connect with my patients. So that wouldn't happen without the exploration team. So we are always asked, so how do you travel so much? Well, we're a group of equal-minded explorers, so we usually plan something around, and all of these ladies are professionals. They all work, they're married, they have kids, and we all have to, arrange our life around so when we can go on a trip, but we get it done, so it's always good. And so over the years, we've had quite a few trips, and so the exploration team just helps me to go places. And then the other thing that I find is I work in the Texas Medical Center, which is, as you know, most people are afraid of going there and afraid of parking the car, and it's very expensive, and they all get lost. So I think going into an office that has images and helps the patients see things different, it's important. And so my office now has become a gallery. So we actually have north of more than 50 pictures in the office. So we try to rotate them and change them. But I think it's definitely very healing for everybody. So, and that's that's us. That's my office team. So this is this was Halloween. So Halloween, I tell my patients if they can make an appointment in Halloween, they definitely should come because that's how we see patients the whole day. And so, so it's really good. And I have another 3-minute video, but we can skip it if we have time. So this video is not as perfect as the other one, but this was February of this year when we went to Kilimanjaro. So this is I did a little slideshow with the photos. This is 19,400 feet. Yeah, this is the highest peak in Africa. Let's see if it plays. That's my brother. Yeah, he had to come because somebody else couldn't come, so he was a spare part, yeah. But he made us laugh a lot, so it was good. So that was before we started going up. We had a day of walking in the kind of jungly part, and then that was our guide explaining the route. So that was the first day you walk kind of in a jungle. And then that's the first camp. So we still have trees, but that's the last we're gonna see of trees for a while, because see, there's no more trees. We're above the tree line here, so from here on there's no more trees. That was our team, that was all our guys that were helped. That's our camp crew, which was quite fun. We actually were 6 people going up, and we had a camp crew of 24, so our whole team was 30 people, which was pretty amazing. Yeah, we have. I mean, actually, I think it will be healing not to Kilimanjaro, but certainly to be in contact with nature. I think it will be really good. Yeah. Well, I have patients that have gone to Kilimanjaro, so we share those stories. It's cold when you're high, yes. At night it gets really cold, and actually you're gonna see, you never know when it's going to snow on the top. And we actually went up snowing, so when we got to the top, it was full of snow, everything. So we start walking for the summit at midnight, and you walk all night. So we summited at 6 a.m. So we walked basically with a flashlight up the whole night. So we're getting pretty high, you see down there. You're walking like like walking on the moon, pretty much. So this is the last camp before, or this is 15,000 feet before summit. And then this is summit the next morning at 6 a.m. As the sun was starting to come up, and you see it's all full of snow because it had snowed the whole night going up. But there's not always a snow on the top. Yeah. And then so that's how you rescue the patients on that thing. That's you put the patient and you wheel him down between 4 people. The people that can't go down. And so we're back in jungle. So as you go down, you get back into the forest where there's trees again. And so that was Kilimanjaro with the snow. That's almost to the end of the trail. And look, that was a little tree that we found on the way. And so we finally made it back to the cars, and we were done. And that was our camp crew. That was the whole camp crew that was helping us. So that's it. That's all my talk.
So we're going to do another Q&A. I have 2 questions for you guys, one for each. How did you feel healed with your photography? Do you think that process of art and the work vulnerable, how did you use this medium to heal yourself, right, in a broad way?
Excuse me. Well, I think that's a strange question because it wasn't the medium necessarily, I don't think. For me, it was the process of going through all of that, and then also, having to really contemplate using that medium, but the medium itself, I don't think was necessarily the healing element. I think it was more the process that I used to get to, the conclusions that I got to about my body and all of that. That it could have been, I probably could have done that with another medium. So I'm saying.
That was just an accessibility.
Well, it was, like I said, I was lying in bed. So I had, the phone and the iPad, and that's all I had to work with. I was resting, and so I used whatever was most available to me, which was those. But then, when I start dealing with the images, because I manipulate those images somewhat. I don't just take a straight photograph, and I start playing with them in terms of photoshopping and what have you them. But yeah, so I wouldn't say it's the medium. I would say it's the process of using that medium to have the conversation around healing.
I really find it fascinating that both of you are really using photography or your means of expression for communication. Mm-hmm. And also for communication that is not necessarily the normal, the norm, right? Mm-hmm. You're communicating with your patients, and that's not a normal way of communicating with your patients, and yet, you find that a healing process. And you just said that, Vicki, that you're wanting to communicate with people that don't necessarily go to museums. Mm-hmm. So I think that's really fascinating that both of you have this in common. Mm-hmm. The other thing that I find fascinating is that you're both tending towards video, right? And I just want you to comment on that, because I think it's really important to notice that you're really thinking outside the box and using art in a completely different way. You know, more of a person-to-person, human-to-human kind of communication.
Did you want to say something about that?
Yes, I think definitely we all speak the same language. It's just a matter of how we get there. And definitely, I mean, for me, video was a way to condense a lot of pictures on one quick way to take you to the journey, which is what, you know, I don't video in the office. I don't do video in the office, which I have thought of actually, but we do still photography. But I agree. I mean, I think video for both of us could be a way to have people interact with us in a bigger scale that wouldn't be just a gallery or wouldn't be just, you know, me trying to show you a still picture. So I think it's definitely a good media.
And I'm probably going to be doing it in a slightly different way, and in that I'm not trying to do, excuse me, films. You know, I'm not doing a narrative film. I'm using video as the medium that I will begin to explore some of the same topics that I'm looking at in my, my work that I've been doing for the last 30 years. In fact, the first video that I'm doing is based on a piece that's in that show. It's called I Could Be Angry All the Time If I Think Too Hard. So that's the piece that I'll be working on first. And then there'll be a 10-minute video that will be a combination of live and stills and manipulated imagery with the goal of getting it out there, streaming it, and doing, you know, that kind of a way of getting it to people, which, as I said, you know, when you're doing physical things, you have to have a place to put those, and then you have to hope that people come to see that work wherever you put it. When you get online, all of a sudden you have an audience that you don't even know who some of those people might be. But you can also direct it towards a group of people in another place specifically. And I'm really excited more about that than I am about video. You know what I mean? It's like, you know, that's not what's exciting to me. What's exciting to me is the ability to now reach so many more people with the work and create a dialogue with people in places that I, you know, wouldn't necessarily travel to even. I mean, you know, right now I have people in places where I've traveled that I definitely want to connect with and stay connected to, but there are people who I may never see in person, but who can have a conversation with me around this work now because of the medium of video and the ability to use technology to get it out there.
Sorry, I had a second question that I never got to ask Cristina. It's more of an observation. So I feel like the birth of your medical career was in a way anthropological and with photography as well. So I wonder, now you're kind of branched and you do your medical thing and then you travel and do your kind of anthropological observation when you travel. And I'm just curious, where do you see this, and is this going to fuse again beyond just showing travel photography to your patients? Do you have any ideas at the moment? Have you ever thought about it? Or?
Yeah, I think the anthropological was kind of accidental because, I mean, it was, but it was really an opportunity that rarely comes. I mean, just to be able to be there and work with these people, it's very difficult to do, and it really opened your mind, which maybe just kept it open. I hope that was the result of it, to where you are really the weird person there. I mean, they are the normal, and you are the spectacle. So wherever you go, you know, they're touching you and they're feeling you, and because you're weird. So all of a sudden you come into a different world where you are the weird person. So I think that, you know, maybe you're vulnerable at the time, right? Because you are really a stranger in a stranger land that you don't know I mean, literally, you never knew what the next 5 minutes was going to happen. So it just, whatever happened, and maybe in 5 minutes a plane will land and you'll have to take a patient somewhere, and you think you're coming back that evening, and you came back a week or two later because that's how everything went there. So I think it just basically kept my mind open and allowed me to connect with people a lot more different than just your normal patient-doctor relationship. So I don't know that I'll be looking for more anthropological experiences. That one was unique, and I don't think you can. But for me, it's more imaging. So images. When I walk, I think through the world, I see images. I see colors. I see shapes. I see things. So I mean, sometimes I do photograph people because I enjoy it, but it doesn't necessarily have to be people. So, yeah.
Can I ask you a question about photography, but from Vicky's point of view? One of the most interesting aspect of your pictures is the close-up of your skin. You don't say if that is the state of the worst disease or after recovery.
The fact that hold on, having a little bit of a throat challenge.
I think Vicky needs a doctor.
The best thing you can do is to open the door.
Thank
the air inside is not
Thank
very
God
good.
we have Paolo here to help her. So, Dr. Angelini.
Yeah, whatever you got, bring it up. I've got these things, but it's not what.
Let's recover her, but let's go to Cristina for a second.
Yes.
Can you apply her experience a little bit for the general audience about this Hashimoto thyroid disease?
Disease, yes.
What?
So, Hashimoto's thyroid disease. So,
Oh yeah, talk about that.
don't tell Vicky now. So, well, really, the thyroid it's super interesting because, like Vicky says, it's really the regulator of everything. So if your thyroid is sick, everything in your body is sick. So I was kind of joking with Dr. Angelini, who's a cardiologist, saying that the thyroid is more important than the heart, and he was not agreeing with me. But anyway, so yes, the thyroid, it's a common victim of your immune system. So a lot of thyroid disease are because your immune system starts attacking the thyroid. So you have Hashimoto's, which is a autoimmune thyroid disease where you create these antibodies that attack the thyroid cells and destroy the thyroid. So it's a long process and it doesn't happen overnight, but most people end up hypothyroid with an underactive thyroid after you've had all this immune attack. And the way I see it is we know that the immune system destroys the thyroid, but we don't exactly know why your immune system, decides to get turned on and decides to attack your thyroid. And it can attack it in many ways. So it's sometimes also the same immune attack can cause your thyroid to be overactive and not underactive. And so that's the more commonly known as Graves' disease, which is hyperthyroidism. So your thyroid can be normal, which is what we hope for, can be overactive, which means it works over time and it makes you sick because it's making too much thyroid hormone, and can be underactive to where you become hypothyroid. And but sometimes it can do both, then it gets really complicated. So the work of the endocrinologist has a lot of art involved. So especially everybody wants the thyroid to be the culprit of everything. So you always have to okay, maybe you're thyroid, but maybe not. So maybe we have to work on other things too. So, yeah.
And total thyroidectomy is common because of Hashimoto disease?
Not really because of Hashimoto. I mean, it's very rare to have to take a thyroid out because of Hashimoto's, but when you have nodules, which is what Vicky had, you have a bunch of lumps in the thyroid. So there's also thyroid cancer, and some of those nodules can be malignant. So we do our best not to take thyroids out, but if we have to, then, kind of the journey starts, and you will have to learn how to live without a thyroid. And for some people it's easy, and for some people it's very hard, like everything in life, right? And I think it also depends on how things come. So I think Vicky was not particularly prepared for any of it. And so, that kind of hit her hard, and she found her own way to communicate and get her own process through until she made it to the other side of the process but you know, everybody has a different journey, I guess. So,
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. You know, that I had to basically decide that this is what it is now, and you know, I'll figure out how to make the most of this, because I'm just not the type of person who's going to bemoan my situation. You know, it's just not, that's not me. So that's what drove the making of the art. You know, let me deal with this through art production, and let's explore this situation creatively. And that work is what came out of that. Now, you said something, you asked a question about the textures. That I was just playing with, you know, if you take the picture with an iPhone or an iPad and you have a certain type of controlled light, and you're up close, because I did a very close-up photograph, it pixelates it in such a way that it looks like that, but it's really the pixelation that has caused that, you know. And I really was intrigued by that. You know, I thought that the textures were beautiful, you know. And I wasn't trying to do a portrait of myself. I was really just trying to use that face as just an image, basically, and a mood, more than an image, a mood. And that's why I didn't focus necessarily on trying to make it look like me. So, does that answer your question?
Yeah, I was wondering if you realized that there was something strange in your body when you had the last photo because of the skin.
No. Actually, there's so many things were happening. I mean, it was like my skin dryness, the dryness of my skin. I was just like, oh well, you know. I'm telling you, I didn't know anything about it, so everything that was happening, I was literally just chalking up to old age. You get old, you get dry. You get old, you get fat. You get old, you know, everything was just, that's how I was explaining it to myself, because I didn't have a context for it. And, you know, when the doctor told me that I had probably something happening with my thyroid, I didn't even know what a thyroid was. So, yeah. And so that's what prompted me to the skin was one thing, but then there were so many other things, you know, that were happening all at once, you know. Balsamia? You need you need the mic if you're going to do it.
This is more of an observation, but I think it's like that better? Okay. This is more of an observation than a question. I think in our culture of being so disconnected through technology, that both of you have created a portal, a vehicle to healing, either personally or for your patients, through the medium of photography, that it's intimacy that creates the healing.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Thank you.
Good observation.
Yeah. Gee, I do not know. I'm going to try to express what I'm thinking. Everybody has been so articulate. Well, I'm an artist. And what I'm seeing in both of you as people, and which is extremely moving to me, it's two souls exploring life and the possibility of becoming. And that is just awesome. Very touching. It's very touching for me also as a woman. It's an expression of our ability and our depth and our capacity to, again, become the souls that we are. Cristina, I've known Cristina for a couple of years, I was almost at the brink of, tears, looking at your work and looking at this such, in a way, cool way of talking about it. And when I see it's a healing soul that has the tool of medicine, but a lot more than that. That's it. Thank you. Both of you, thank you.
Thank you, Carolina.
I hope you don't mind me sitting down. I'm a therapist, and I constantly deal with clients who have different types of physical ailments and challenges even. And my question to you both is, how can the medium, photography, video, visual arts, be used to convey a message to a person that their illness or their disability doesn't really define them or define the person that they are,
I think actually there's a lot of research going on healing with images and nature, and there's a lot of literature that how healing nature is to people. So I don't know necessarily it should be photography. For me, photography is a way of bringing nature in, because most of my photography is really nature being someplace and I'm trying to bring it in. So I'm thinking, for me, getting patients in touch with nature where you can have some peace and you're not in a hurry the whole day long, I think that will be really healing. I mean, I think if you can use images for that, I'm not sure which way you could incorporate it, but there's definitely healing power in nature.
I'm going to pass because I was waiting for Vicki.
Vicki, maybe, yeah, she needs to start coughing. She'll come back in a second, so go ahead.
My question to you is, how do you use your photography to help your patients? I mean,
Yes, that actually wasn't, I never meant to. It happened accidentally, which I found that I was almost surprised. I just put a few 5 or so. I had an area that wasn't too fun, like every patient has to go through their area to get their vitals, and it was like a little small room. So I said, well, let's just put some pictures, just put some pictures. And then the effect that started having to me was surprising. People. So when I walk in a room, I'll say 80% of the time, whether I know the patient or not, because if I don't know the patient, the patient already has a connection with me, and if I know the patient, then they're looking for the new photos that we have rotated in the office. So I find that they tell me, well, it's not fun to come to a doctor's office. I mean, that's for sure. Me as a patient, I'd hate to go to the doctor, but it's very intimidating to come to the med center, my office is in the 20th floor, so you have to get on an elevator to the 20th floor, and then, I mean, you're scared when you go to see the doctor, because it's always, it may be bad news all around. So I think that helps people to be more relaxed, and you create that link with your patient. So I don't say anything, I just walk in the room and we start talking, and I'll say probably 80% of the patients comment on the photography, say, by the way, your photography, is amazing, or, and that they maybe want to travel, they want to go into nature, they become more. So I think it's just a way of trying to open people's mind. I don't necessarily use it, maybe as a therapist would, trying to fix the problem right now, but it's a way for me to connect with my patients, I think, more than anything else.
The interesting part is I had a pause here because I wasn't getting the mic, and I realized you walked out, and I thought, maybe I shouldn't really ask this question.
But she's not here to answer it.
This question is to both of you, and to Vicki specifically, because you used the word resolve. Mm-hmm. And I know that the process of going through the work is a process of helping to resolve an end effect. I'm wondering, and this is just curiosity to me. If you do not have the venue or place to have other people see it, do you still feel is resolved only because it's your story and nobody else gets to see it? So if you hadn't had the opportunity to have it here, oh, I'm sorry, or the museum, would you still feel is resolved? Would you still feel as though your mission has been completed in this particular field?
Well, I guess for me, when I do a personal piece like that, the work is my getting through it. You know what I'm saying? It's nice that I get to show it to other people, but you know I didn't necessarily think of it as I'm doing this so that I can show this to other people. Now, what I found, though, the interesting thing that I found is I've now shown this installation 3 places, 3 separate places. In every single one of those places, I've had people come up to me and tell me, wow, either I never thought I could talk about this, but, and then they tell you about their thyroid situation. When I did the piece at the University of Midwestern University in Wichita Falls, I specifically asked them to invite the nursing staff to the opening, to the conversation that we were going to have, because it really was the nurses at the hospital that told me what I needed to hear about my healing and all that. You know, some doctors are just not. I mean, I didn't have a woman doctor. I had a male doctor, and then, you know, some of them are just not. They don't think to tell you certain things. You know, like because of my vanity, you know, I wanted to know about scars, and you know, what was the healing going to be like? You know, as a scar was going to definitely be there. You know. And then I wanted to know about pain, and you know, there were all these things I wanted to know about that I was not routinely told, but the nurses told me everything. I mean, they just was like, no, here's what's going to happen, honey. This is what's going to happen. And then, I know he didn't tell you that, but this is what you need to know. And I mean, and so I wanted to really just sort of thank them and let them know how critical they are to making patients feel like they can do this. And I'm also somebody, because I've never had a lot of surgery in my life, I meditate before, like the couple days before and then the day before. I meditate myself into a state of one, that I don't want to bleed a lot, because I don't want any transfusions, and 2, that I want to have no pain. And so, truthfully, when I was through with this surgery, I had a girlfriend that had the surgery like a month or so before, and she was just like, oh my God, Vicki, you're going to be in such pain, and it's going to be terrible. And I was like, nah, I don't think so. I'm going to make this different. I got myself into a mental state, so the doctor said I bled very little, and I did not have to take the pain meds. I was fine. So I try to, you know, to bring a certain spirituality to my healing, and that's the way that I have dealt with this. I did the same thing. I had to have a hysterectomy and did the same thing, because the doctor at that time, this was the 80s, and they were afraid of AIDS. They didn't know how that happened, and so she said, you might have to have a transfusion, so you need to sign off. I was just like, no, I'm not having any transfusions. And I literally meditated for the week before, and then the doctor there said, she said, I don't believe how little you bled. I'm not sure why that was. I was like, oh, well, I'm sure why it was. But you know, it's okay. You know, you don't have to know. But that's how I deal with it, because I'm not somebody who thinks that you don't have some control over your body, and the ability to deal with things that come that you're not expecting. You know, I feel like, you know, we all have it within us if you're not afraid. And I really feel that a lot of the medical stuff is fear. You know, I have a very bad relationship to the medical community because of the stuff that happened in my family with doctors. So I will automatically feel like I have to at least allow myself to have some control in the situation. Is there a mic floating around?
It seems like you've both used your artwork to help others and to work to heal yourself. I wonder about anything that you've had to sacrifice for your art or give into your art to make it happen.
I don't quite understand the question.
Have you had to give up anything in your life in order to make your art occur? Has it interrupted your life in any way?
Well, I've been an artist all my life, so I don't. I'm not sure. I mean, you know, children. For a moment, you know, but not for long. But that's the only thing that's the only time in my life when I actually wasn't producing was when I had my babies, and for like a couple of years I wasn't actively trying to show, because first of all, I was enamored of those children. I just sat and looked at them all day. But that's, you know, other than that, you know, I've always found a way to produce work, and that's just part of being an artist. You figure it out. I don't know. Can you? Well, you don't have a mic, so you can't say anything.
There you
It doesn't have to be filmed, it was just a question.
So my question is to both of you, but really, I think it's very interesting that you would have the medical issue, and then you would be a doctor who would address that issue. And I'm just wondering how can you use that? Because it seems like this moment in time is perfect. It's perfect timing. And as a doctor, would you consider using this type of therapy for a person like myself who had gotten sick and going through it and can't express, because it's really hard to express physically, mentally what you're going through when it's inside, it's internal, people can't see it. People can't see a thyroid. It's like arthritis. Like, how are you going to take this and use it?
Thank you for the question. Yes, good. I think, like I said, you know, definitely if after years of practice, you become an artist just because it's hard to, every patient is completely different and everybody heals differently. So I think Vicki found this way to express herself because that's what she does, right? She's an artist, and so she was able to put it, and when she explains it to all of us, including me, whoa, that makes really a lot of sense, and she went through a lot. So I think that one size doesn't fit all. So, and I think part of really being a doctor, to be a good doctor, you have to have a lot of art in trying to get in people's head and trying to find out how can I heal you. You know, probably the way Vicki healed is not the same way. You know, again, I have more than one patient here in the audience, so it's not probably the way they will have healed. And everybody deals with it differently, and it's your job just to shepherd them through the best way that you can find healing for them. So I think it's definitely a good idea, but I don't know that people, you know, will be able to express in the same way she is able to express herself. So I think you have to, and I think that where your mind has to be open, and you don't have to go in a room thinking, well, all the patients have to do the same. Like, okay, not every patient has to take synthetic thyroid hormone, for example, because not everybody feels good on it, but you will find some doctors that will only prescribe one thing and that one thing only. And well, that's how they work and that's how they practice. But you have to understand that some people don't want to take treatment at all, and you can't force them, you know, as much as you would like them to take treatment. If they don't want it, you need to explain and try to make sure they're understanding what you're saying. But if they say, I don't want to take it, I mean, so see, it's just, it's very difficult because everybody's so different. So,
I'd like to, let me.
Thank you.
Oh, that's over?
yeah, it's over.
You know, it's funny because my endocrinologist was not terribly communicative, but the guy that did the actual the surgeon
It's great.
Now, and I think part of it might have been an age thing. The surgeon was very young. I mean, he was a young doctor, and he was very hip and all this.
Yes.
And so,
It's styles and everything.
yeah.
Yeah.